Dominaria Remastered is a set that's on its way. I'm really interested in this, but I want to make some card predictions. I've got 30 of them here for you, and I'll explain why I arrived at that number in just a moment. Thanks for tuning in. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome back to the channel. Dominaria Remastered, going to be available in draft and collector boxes. The draft box suggests to us, obviously, that the set's going to be draftable. It's got to have some utility in order to have staying power as a product. So what I've done here is I've predicted what I think the draft archetypes might be based on sort of classic Magic gameplay, and then picked a few cards for each of them as an example. So without further ado, let's just crack into it. But first, if you like videos like this and you'd like to follow along, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, leave a comment. It really does go a long way. The first archetype I see is a classic one, white-blue control. This is a definite option for this particular set. The most classic control finisher of all time is Serra Angel. It hangs back at the very end, and you just chip away at your opponent while you counter anything and everything they could possibly do. You know that counter spell's probably going to be in a set like this, but maybe they throw Absorb in there. Absorb would be just a really cool card that says, yes, go blue-white, go control, stay in the game. I think even later cards, I say later, they're old at this point, like March of Souls. You know, March of Souls would be a cool reprint because it's gotten a lot more relevant lately. It's a good late game board wipe that gives you some bodies. It's a powerful white card. I think stuff like that could have some really good overlap in some of these other archetypes. Number two, to me, shifting around the color pie a little bit, going into blue-black, I think blue-black could be a little bit of like an evasion and control archetype. You've got cards like Hypnotic Spectre or Shadow Mage Infiltrator, even cards like Decree of Silence. Like you've got cards that are going to shut down your opponent, but sneaky cards with evasion and unblockable abilities that are going to get in there, refill your hand, and then cards that are going to control your opponent in a little more black ways, you know, discarding cards. There's definitely going to be removal spells, but I think cards like this could really sum up that particular archetype. Shifting over next to black-red, this is what I call Machinehead. Black-red Machinehead is just an aggressive, pummeling, discard, haste, burn, kill you type of magic. I loved playing this back in the late 90s, early 2000s. I see cards like one of my favorite of all time, Blazing Spectre, being a perfect include. This epitomizes Machinehead. Fast, haste, hit you for damage, discard cards. Like, boom, in a nutshell, chef's kiss, this type of card. I love this thing so much. But also, cards like Fervor. This is a card that could have overlap with some other archetypes I'm about to talk about. Fervor giving all of your creatures haste really fits into that well. And then, of course, Hypnotic Spectre. We already talked about that being in black-blue. This is a great place that card overlaps. So maybe there's another Spectre card, Abyssal Spectre, something along those lines. We could see, but I think that these types of cards slot in perfectly to an archetype like this. Shifting over, red-green, Stompy. You go Gruul, red-green, Stompy. It's not technically called Gruul because that's on Ravnica. It didn't exist yet, but Gruul, Stompy, Fervor is a card that is definitely going to overlap really well with this, right? But maybe you've got something else like Need for Speed. Maybe lands come into play. So I could see a card like Need for Speed. I could also see a favorite of mine that I'm waiting for Wizards to reprint, Overabundance. This would be perfect for a deck type like this. You get extra mana, acceleration, you're sort of burning the candle at both ends. I love this in there. And then throw a classic red finisher in there like a Thundermare. Thundermare is super cool. I love this card. That's a great card to put in this. And it also bleeds over into some other decks like, say, the Machinehead deck we just talked about. So I like that for red-green Stompy. Number 5, white-green, sort of go wide ramp. That's a classic approach in Magic. You know, White Weenie was an old classic archetype, but the kind of green go wide and ramp would be really cool. Overrun could be a really great finisher card here. Sataniel Hierophants. This is a card from Urza Saga that I don't think has ever been reprinted. It's a little expensive, and it's the perfect type of thing that turns all your weenies into mana dorks and adds a lot of ramp on board. It synergizes with going wide and getting bodies. This is the type of set that you put cards like this into me. I love seeing that. I also love Hunting Grounds. Like, put a card like this in there. It's never been reprinted, I don't think, and I think that a set like this, green, white, go wide, perfect setup for something like this. Number 6 to me, shifting to the enemy color pairings now, green, black, like Reanimator or The Rock used to have this deck that was just this battle cruiser mid-range kind of deck called The Rock. This is where cards like Genesis and Animate Dead, these types of cards are going to be perfectly at home, but also Spiritmonger. Spiritmonger, you have to remember, while it's kind of priced like a bulk rare these days, this card was the craziest thing that I think we had ever seen when it got printed into Apocalypse. A 6/6 for 5 mana with all upside was absolutely unheard of at the time. This card is a classic to me. I think about it all the time when I'm looking at old gold cards, multicolor cards really. This is a definite include in something like this. Shifting over now, white and black. I see white and black being like a good and evil kind of big, swingy, offensive type of cards. What I mean by that is cards like perhaps Blinding Angel or even like Ebon Blade Reaper. This would be a really cool card. This has not ever been reprinted, and I think a set like this, these kind of sneaky, big, swingy, ultra good and evil, just like extremes type of cards would be good in there. I also think like Exalted Angel, this would be a really good opportunity to reprint a card like that. Big, swingy, board changing stuff. I think white black would be really interesting. And then they're also serving as top end cards for like blue black kind of control. That's a good finisher. Also, the kind of green white go wide or white blue control. You've got bigger creatures here that slot in and they cross boundaries really well. Number 8, white and red, go classic aggro. This is something that kind of bleeds over into the Machinehead. It bleeds over into the kind of green-white go wide. You could have cards like Mobilization to crank out tokens, but Aggravated Assault. This is the opportunity to reprint Aggravated Assault. It hasn't seen a reprint. It definitely needs one. This would be perfect place for it, but I also see cards like Fervent Charge being a really good include in something like this. I think that this is also going to let you add 3 colors to maybe a draft archetype. I'm trying to pick stuff that I think has good synergistic overlap, but also really fun potential for card choices. So try something like that out. Number 9, you're in red-blue now. I think you go classic Spellslinger. This is where you have cards like Browbeat and Stifle. Like, you're going to have stuff in here that's Lightning Bolt and Shatter and perhaps even Incinerate, good burn spells like that. We know there's going to be Counterspell and maybe Boomerang, good, simple, low-to-the-ground blue cards. But I think you can put in more interesting cards like Browbeat. Browbeat's a favorite of mine. It's a hand filler and a damage spell, either or. I love this card. Stifle is the type of blue toolboxy card that would probably be really at home in a deck like this, and I think a cool finisher that really aligns well here, but also transfers over into these other archetypes would be Magnivore. Magnivore that gets bigger when you've got spells in your graveyard that are sorceries. Awesome. I love this. Let it synergize with this and bleed over into others. Lastly, one of my favorite old school color pairings, blue-green. This is like a value kind of crossover color here. You've got cards like Mind's Desire. You're going to ramp really big if you go kind of a green-white deck, right? So let cards like Mind's Desire be a big payoff if you're in green and ramping. Let it explode the top of your deck. Be awesome. I say throw in Mystic Snake. Mystic Snake is one of my all-time favorite cards. It's what you call a staple creature. You took a grizzly bear and a counter spell and you stapled them together, mana costs and all. This is a card that I think teaches a lot to younger players about card design, at least older philosophies, newer philosophies. It's iconic to me. I think it would slot really well in here, can definitely bleed into other archetypes, but also this could be an opportunity to put in cards like Ice Cave. Like Ice Cave is a card that's going to reward you for ramping and having lots of mana available, but it's also going to bleed over into the kind of black-blue control archetype, even the white-blue control archetype. I think that a card like this is a very interesting opportunity to reprint some of these more obscure cards into settings that make them very powerful. So I know I moved through that very fast, but I couldn't help myself. That was so exciting to me. Like I say all the time, I love draft. It's so fun to me. It's one of the reasons why I love keeping sealed boxes. I know that I've got a party in a box if I ever decide not to sell it. But anyway, I want to know what you think. What do you think about this? Do you have any ideas of your own? Do you think that draft archetypes are a crazy way to think about this? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what some of your previews are. My next video coming out are all of my generic card predictions. These are cards that I think are just going to be in the set or would be cool. Maybe they fit in with what we've talked about here. Maybe they don't, but stay tuned for the big hitters in my next video. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, consider commenting, subscribing. Until the next time, take care.